So I have been grinding both these games recently, and holy shit, it is amazing. The art, the music, the lore, which makes me want to dive deeper into history and appreciate its intricacies even more. Fun fact about me is that despite my history of trying to make a Metroidvania game on this channel, I am not much of a fan playing them. But this game made me want more, to the extent that I've went above and beyond to platinum the second game's achievements. And because of that, of course, the artist in me can't help but make a fan art of one of the coolest boss fights in the game, Eviterno, the first of the penitents. On this video, I wanted to share the process on how I was able to come up with this fan art from start to finish, which programs I use, and commentate the majority of my thought process as we dive deeper into the making of this artwork. I wanted to start with the stuff that actually caught my attention on the environment, and it was these dudes chilling on top of the room. They're called the Sleeping Martyrs based on the official game's concept art by concept artist Jesus Campos, who also goes by the name Nurkin. And his works are really cool. If you're a fan of Blasphemous or you just simply love art in general, feel free to check him out. I made sure to link his ArtStation profile on the description below. I use this program called Daz Studio, which is a really cool program and is free, by the way. You can pose 3D models, change their body shapes. Some people even use this program to make whole scenes with environments and characters posing in them, though I prefer to do that on Blender, as you can see on this video later on. But for now, I am simply trying to match these poses with Nurkin's concept art, as well as give them the natural pose and gestures as they're hanging out on the ceilings. Overall, this was a really fun posing exercise. Once I'm done posing the characters on Daz Studio, I've exported the models into Blender, where we would be doing the cloth simulations as well as the majority of the compositions, the models, and the environment. As you can see in-game as well as the concept art, these guys are actually hanging on these pieces of clothing, and they look pretty chill, to be honest. I was actually thinking that this would go quite easily, as I just kind of wanted to let them fall over the cloth and let the cloth stretch out. However, I realized that really wouldn't work, and it wouldn't give us the consistent results similar to the game and the concept art. Therefore, I had to improvise. I eventually realized that we could just simply animate the cloth to go upwards through the bodies and then run the cloth simulation in hopes that the cloth stretches out, creating the illusion that these dudes are hanging on them. So here's how the cloth simulations went. For the second simulation, I decimated the lower poly version of the model for optimization purposes and made whatever the fuck this abomination is. The purpose is to have the simulated cloth get snagged as it is moving upwards, that way it wouldn't go all the way up through the guy's chest. The way I'm doing it is actually pretty comical, and to be honest, I never expected this unorthodox bullshit I'm doing would actually work, but it kinda worked, so I guess I'm gonna stick with it. I had to do a little bit of manual adjustments through vertex modeling and sculpting to make things a little cleaner, though I later realized that another subdivision layer could have done the trick easier and cleaner than what it is now, but I'm too lazy to do that, so it is what it is, I guess. Moving on to texturing, to prepare our cloth models for texture painting, I am using this really handy Blender plugin called UV Squares, which, self-explanatory, automatically flattens UVs into squares. It is really helpful in UV organization and in certain situations such as this one. I wanted to give some of the clothing some tattered edges to match the game style, as well as give it a bit of a more dark, gritty aesthetic it deserves. So I went ahead and did a little bit of texture painting, which would in turn become the alphas later on to determine the material's opacity. I actually had a little mistake of painting this in reverse. Supposedly the black areas are to be the transparent parts, so I would just have to invert the black and whites to correct this. Once we've wrapped up with the texture painting, by simply putting our newly painted textures as alphas, we now have the desired results. I then went on to take a quick cloth texture from Quixel Bridge and added some ambient occlusion to the material. So far, it kinda looks awesome. For our sleepy little friends here, I separated the Z-normals to give it some sort of a feel where natural light would be coming from above, and a little bit of a bump map to give it some texture similar to realistic skin. Well, they do not look realistic at all, and I would need to do texture painting to make it look perfect, but I'm lazy, so nah. I'm just gonna paint it over in Photoshop post-rendering. Moving on to the environments, I had to admit, the first time I got into this boss arena, I did not even notice that the background was filled with these graves until I managed to defeat the boss, which I had a pretty rough time with, and had the opportunity to peacefully explore the area without the threat of being decimated by him. Even the floor was made with the graves laid out with the same cloth material from the chill dudes hanging from above. Here I am using two of the coolest Blender plugins for environments like these. One is called Cracker, and as the name states it lets you crack things with ease. The other one is called OCD, which is short for one-click damage, and this gives us these amazing looking wear and damage on the models. And with the power of these two plugins combined, it gives us these amazing results. Of course, links to these plugins are in the description. I am currently stacking these graves into different varieties and then merging them together once I get the perfect looking stack. This is so I could later turn them into reusable assets, which I could just simply copy and paste all over the scene to give it life. Also, the in-game graves have these unique cloth draped all over them. That means that once we get the stacks done, it will be time for more cloth simulations. Now that we have our assets ready, it's time to get them put together into the actual scene. I started by placing the simulated cloth all over the floor to try and add details on the lower section of the environment, and also to make sure that my PC does not blow up by the end of this project. I've made sure to decimate the models to try and keep the overall poly counts optimized. Here I was actually thinking of making the boss room circular with the pillars going around the whole arena and the throne in the center of the room. However, I ultimately decided to cut the idea and just stay true to what is shown in game, where we could get to fight the boss on the end of the room, which for me gives us the more compelling composition and makes us feel that we're up against something big. For the pathway leading to the boss, I lined up a couple of the same graves from earlier and joined them all together to make an imposter model, which is a lower poly decimated model of it. That way, we could run the simulation easier and make it look similar to how the pathway looks in game. And to be honest, I never expected it to look good as this. Here, I am setting up the scene with some proxy and textured walls to help me with the composition and the lighting. With the help of a few spotlights and some volumetrics, it gives us these really cool god rays coming from above, which helps us set the initial tone for the overall scene. The addition of volumetrics just makes everything look amazing, and I could not see myself doing a render without them. From a previous project of mine, I've actually modeled these stone pillars that have this detail in which people hold them up. These dudes were actually posed on Daz Studio as well, and I'll be taking that specific detail to design and model a brand new pillar which we could get to fill the scene later on as we progress through the environment. These new pillar designs aren't exactly taken nor seen from the original game's concept art, however I wanted to give them a personal touch for the final output. Using Blender curves, I wanted to give the pillars a little bit of spice with details of thorns, which are a thematic detail to the game's concepts, referencing penitence and sacrifice. Once I've gotten through modeling most of the details of the pillars, I've added the OCD Blender plugin to make sure the details are on fleek, and added the same textures from the graves from earlier, and found myself satisfied with the results. Now I've added the pillars beside the walkways with just a little bit of adjustment with the lighting. That means that we're done with the majority of the scene. Therefore, it's time to add candles. There is not a better thing to set the vibe of an environment other than candles. May it be something romantic, something peaceful, and even something straight out of a horror movie. Adding candles just makes it better. So, for a little self-advertisement, these 3D candles that are being shown here are only a few of the many great things you could get from my Fantasy Environment Kitbash Set, which of course is made by yours truly. For only $14.99, you could get over 70 plus modular 3D models to fill your dream fantasy environment. It is up on sale on my ArtStation page in Gumroad. It is currently one of the biggest ways to support me, my art, and my channel, and it will be perfect for quick kit bashing, concept art, idea generation, and creating these beautiful fantasy environments. With that said and done, going back to the video, here you can see me lighting up the entire room with these candles, and with the volumetrics on the environment running, plus the emissive glow from the candles, it just creates this beautiful bloom effect that sets the mood up for the entire room. If you may have noticed, as I am laying out objects on the scene, I usually prefer to work with two viewports where the other one is on the rendered view mode and the other one is on the default solid view mode. This helps me evaluate if whatever I'm doing is actually creating impact on the overall composition and helps me see things on the larger scale. Now, I actually thought I was going to stop here for the environment, however, something felt missing. So I made a little bit of an experiment with a simple plane in the background with an emissive texture, thinking if some sort of a window casting light behind the throne would make the scene, and for some reason, yes it did. So I decided to design a rose window in Photoshop, thinking I could later put it in as an alpha texture, however, it just didn't cut it, and I wasn't that satisfied. So I decided to take the project back to Blender and model a rose window with the help of a few Blender curves and a little bit of polygonal modeling, making sure every detail would fit the dark, gritty tone of the environment. I kind of wanted to stick with a circle design, however for some reason it felt off. and it felt as if I broke the overall composition with how huge and overpowering the light is from behind the scene. So I decided to go with the idea from earlier to turn it into this pillar of light, and made a few adjustments with the window. I kinda like this one better, so I decided to keep it. However, I would love to ask your opinion about it. What do you think? Was the circular window better, or did I make the right choice? Feel free to leave a comment. Now, onto the characters. I actually found this free, fully rigged model of a knight on Sketchfab, which I think is really clean. It is UV mapped, fully textured, an overall great model. Props to this guy for making it free. Brother, sister, whatever, you are amazing. Left a link in the description for you guys who want it. This guy would be the base model that I would be using for the characters visible on screen, though we would have to model a few things, specifically the penitent helmets as well as the weapons, and paint them over in Photoshop later on to match the actual characters from the game. In Blasphemous 2, there are 3 weapons which you could choose from, and all 3 are amazing. However, for me, there is no cooler looking weapon than the Ruego al Alba, which literally means prayer at dawn. For me, it was the weapon that I've used throughout the majority of the game, and it just looks and feels amazing. The counterattacks you can do after a parry, the chaos you can make during a blood pact, it just overall feels really good and gives you the perfect balance between offense and defense. Which is the reason why I chose this weapon for this scene with no hesitation. I modeled it from scratch with Nurkin's concept art as a reference, and did a little bit of sculpting with the praying hands and the weapon's handguard. This was actually some really lazy modeling, as I know most of it would be silhouetted in the foreground and would not be visible, so I would just paint over most of the details once we get into Photoshop later on. For those who've played through the game, which weapons did you use most? Feel free to talk about it in the comments down below. I also did some lazy modeling for the iconic penitent helmets. All 3 of the characters on the scene have these similar pointy heads, so by doing this, I'm hitting 3 birds in 1 stone, or should I say 3 penitents in 1 stone. To complete the scene, I've also added these sensors hanging all over the ceilings, which is taken from the same Fantasy Kitbash Set we've talked about from earlier. It's not a detail shown in the game, but I figured it would be a very fitting detail to add depth to the environment. With a few adjustments on the character's poses as well as some off-screen camera adjustments, it's finally time to hit
the subscribe button.
Just kidding, it's the render button, but yeah, please subscribe. Now that we have our image rendered, it's time to head on into Photoshop. As you may have noticed, I've made a few changes to the camera angle and decided to take on a landscape orientation rather than the portrait orientation from earlier. I personally think that it's more compelling and that it fits the storytelling a whole lot better. For the majority of the color correction, I am using Photoshop's Camera Raw filter feature as well as a few adjustment layers to push the colors further. I also did some manual overpainting for a few details on the characters, such as the worn cloth and the torns on the penitent one's silhouette, Chrysanthus' sword, and, Eviterno's edginess. to give it the final painterly look, I used a program called Photo Sketcher, which is a neat program that gives images these painterly filters and manually masks them over the artwork, which actually helps out a lot with muting the background details without losing texture, making the main subject sharper and pop even better, giving us the final artwork. Hey, wow, you actually reached the end of the video. This means a lot to me. Thank you so much for staying, and I hope you enjoyed watching as much as I enjoyed making this artwork. I've spent a lot of time into making this artwork and editing this video, so I would really appreciate it if you give it a like, or subscribe to my channel, and hit that bell. Of course, you can view this artwork in HD on my ArtStation. I would highly appreciate it if you check it out, as you can also view all my other works in there. Link is of course in the description. And if you may have known me from my previous videos, I'm pretty sure that you are aware that I have been missing for like 2 years already, so I'm gonna talk about a little channel update. This actually feels really new to me, and if you don't care about that, that's fine, just go ahead and click on another video. But I wanted to address something for my current subscribers on this channel. I've moved on from programming to a career in the art industry, which I know would be sad for most of you guys who have subscribed to the channel for the programming and the game development content. However, when I started this channel, I actually kind of wanted to do it solely for fun and enjoyment. I was trying to learn programming while doing content out of it, and I never expected this channel to blow up this much. However, during that time, my life kind of hit rock bottom. Plus, the hard drive with a game that I was making at that time unfortunately got corrupted, and the more I tried, the more I pushed myself into remaking what I lost, the more it felt like a job I didn't like rather than something I do out of passion, which was kind of depressing to be honest, and kind of defeated the purpose of the whole channel overall, which was learning things for fun and enjoyment. And you know, I've been seeing comments from people asking more of the game development content, and it's actually heartwarming, but at the same time heartbreaking knowing that I've burnt out of it. Hopefully I could reignite that passion. However, at this time, I may be making more content on the art side of things, but who knows? Maybe I'll start messing around with Unreal Engine. Spoiler alert. So yeah, if you like my content, it would mean the world to me if you were to hit the subscribe button, leave a like, a comment, and hit that bell. If you don't like it, that's okay. I'm also a big fan of constructive criticism, so I'd love to hear that as well. And I wish you all the best. Peace.